What if the girl your whole neighborhood mocked turned out to be the woman a billionaire had been searching for his entire life? She wore hand-me-down shoes, delivered meals, got laughed at daily. But when a stranger with nothing moved in next door, everything changed. Because behind the cracked walls and whispered insults, a crown was waiting, and she had no idea it belonged to her. In a crumbling apartment block on the edge of a city that forgot its poor, lived a girl the world never noticed. Her name was Liana. No one remembered her birthday. No one invited her for tea. When she passed through the narrow alley of the compound holding her laundry or a bag of secondhand groceries, the neighbors would lower their voices. Not out of respect, but disdain. They whispered that she was too quiet to be trusted, too pretty for her own good, probably lazy since she stayed home too much. In truth, Liana had 3 jobs: cleaning houses in the morning, running errands for the elderly in the afternoon, and waiting tables at a dimly lit diner until past midnight. Her body ached, her shoes had holes, and her hands smelled of detergent and onions most days. But still, she smiled. She never answered their insults, never returned their stares. Because Liana had grown up knowing that silence was sometimes stronger than rage, and dignity was a weapon more powerful than pride. The neighbors thought her silence meant weakness. They were wrong. Her room was small. Just enough space for a mattress, a single window with peeling paint, and a shelf of books she collected from the trash bins of the richer districts. She had one good dress and a coat missing 2 buttons, but she kept everything clean, neat, sacred. Her dreams were quiet too. She didn't want mansions or cameras or crowds. She wanted safety, a place where no one shouted, a voice that didn't lie, a hand that held hers not out of pity, but love. Most nights, she curled up beneath her thin blanket and listened to the sound of arguments from the next room, the drunken laughter from the courtyard, the radio playing from the rooftop apartment, and wondered when her turn would come. Not for fame, not for riches, but for peace. Just peace. One morning, she left the compound early. She had a long shift at the diner and a bag of soup to deliver to an old woman named Mrs. Ethel on the way. The hallway was already buzzing with gossip. "Did you see her last night with that parcel of rice? I bet someone gave it to her out of pity. Ugh, I wouldn't even let my son talk to her. Those eyes, she'll seduce and steal." Liana didn't respond. She smiled gently, nodded, and kept walking. If only they knew. Every night she gave half her dinner to a stray cat that slept near the garbage bins. Every Sunday, she stitched torn clothes for free for the kids who ran barefoot in the neighborhood. And every payday she sent 20 home to her younger brother, who lived with an uncle in the village, so he wouldn't grow up thinking life was only cruel. No one saw these things, but someone was about to. And the man who would change her life forever. He would not come in a car. He would not wear a suit. He would not introduce himself with fanfare. In fact, he'd arrive just like her, invisible, mocked, and watching. It was on a Tuesday, quiet, gray, and humid, when the room next to Liana's was finally rented out. For weeks it had stayed empty. The landlord said it was too small, too damp. The walls were chipped, and the ceiling dripped when it rained. No one wanted it. But then one morning she heard a soft knock, muffled footsteps, and the dragging sound of an old duffel bag being pulled down the hall. She peeked through the gap in her curtain. He looked tired, tall, lean, dressed in a faded hoodie, jeans that had seen better days, and worn-out sneakers. His face was partly hidden beneath a baseball crew, but she caught a glimpse of his eyes, sharp, observant, yet heavy, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. No one helped him. The landlady took the cash, handed him the key, and left. He opened the rusty door next to hers and disappeared inside without a word. The compound wasted no time. "Another broken stray," someone sneered from the balcony, probably hiding from loan sharks. Liana heard the laughter, the murmurs, the judgment, but she said nothing. Later that evening, as she returned from her shift at the diner, she saw him again, sitting on the concrete steps, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the broken courtyard fountain. He had a bottle of water in his hand and a backpack beside him. They didn't speak, but he nodded at her. She nodded back. That night, Liana heard him coughing, a dry, persistent sound through the thin wall they shared. Around midnight, she rose, boiled some ginger water, added honey, and walked over. She knocked gently. The door opened after a few seconds. He blinked. "I'm sorry," she said. "I heard you coughing. Thought this might help." He hesitated, then took the mug slowly. "Thanks." "I'm Liana," she offered, voice soft. He looked at her, a bit longer than necessary. Then, "Jay," she smiled. "Welcome to the building, Jay." And then she walked away. Simple. No prying questions, no assumptions, just kindness, pure, unwrapped. Jay stared at the mug in his hands, steam curling upward like a ribbon. For the first time in days, he smiled. The next morning, someone stole Jay's laundry from the line. It was the beginning of a week-long silent war. Missing slippers, accidentally spilled mop water, someone smearing leftover soup near his door. But he didn't react, not once. And Liana noticed. She saw how he swept the mess without complaint, how he skipped meals quietly, how he avoided conflict, even when boys from the building mocked him for smelling like wet newspapers. One evening, she left an extra packet of food by his door. No note, no explanation. The next day, her broken faucet was fixed, silently, carefully. She didn't have to ask. She knew it was him. Jay was watching more than just the water dripping from Liana's roof. He was watching her. The way she gave without expecting anything back. How she spoke to the janitor with the same tone she used with strangers. How she never laughed at the neighborhood gossip, even when they laughed at her. He had come here for one reason, to find out if love could still grow in truth, not title. If a woman could love a man without knowing what he owned. And now, in a rundown building that smelled like rust and boiled rice, next to the girl everyone dismissed, he felt something impossible. Hope. The lights went out again. Third time that week. The landlord blamed a transformer problem, but everyone knew it was the unpaid electric bill for the entire building. Most cursed and lit candles. Some cursed louder and went to sleep early. But Liana, used to this kind of darkness, simply boiled water with the small gas tank she kept hidden and lit her single tea light on the windowsill. She had just sat down to eat when a knock came. It was Jay. "Sorry," he said quietly. "I don't have any candles. Didn't think to get some." She looked at him for a second, then stepped aside. "You can eat here. I've got soup. It's not much." He hesitated. "Don't worry," she added. No strings attached. He stepped in. The room smelled faintly of lemongrass and clean laundry. The mattress was neatly laid on the floor. A stack of worn books sat beside it. Her small table held 2 chipped bowls of noodle soup and a tiny bottle of soy sauce that had been refilled too many times to count. Jay sat. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, "You are always this generous to strangers." She shrugged. "Most people are just lonely and hungry. That's not their fault." He looked at her in the soft glow of candlelight. Her face wasn't caked with makeup. Her clothes were faded, but there was something so clear in her eyes, something unshakable. She had no money, no status, no protection, and yet she wasn't afraid. She was the bravest person he'd met. That night, they talked about books, about street food, about how the city had changed. She told him about her mother, who passed when she was 12, about her dream of becoming a teacher. He told her, vaguely, that he had worked in construction before losing everything. She didn't pry, he didn't lie, and when it got late and the candle melted to its base, she handed him an old flashlight. "Keep it," she said, "but it's yours." "I've got 2, she lied. He smiled. "You're a strange one, Liana. People say that a lot." He paused. "They don't deserve you." She looked down, not ready to believe that, yet. The next week, Jay fixed her broken fan, quietly. He didn't say anything, just left it working in her room with a sticky note. "Thought you could use some wind." In return, she sewed the tear in the lining of his hoodie, left a clean towel on his doorknob, and once dropped off a small packet of ginger candy with a scribbled message. "Helps with stress," or so I read. They became something, not lovers, not friends, not yet, but something tender, something safe. And in a world that mocked people like them, that was everything. But not everyone was blind. The neighbors began to whisper again. "She's warming up to the new guy. Must think he's easy to trap. I saw her give him food. Desperate girl, trying to catch a broke man. She just wants someone to suffer with. Birds of a feather." Liana heard it all. Jay did too. But she still knocked on his door when it rained extra hard and the hallway started to flood. And he still left her tiny folded paper cranes outside her door with quotes written inside. One said, "In the quiet, love grows, and it doesn't need to shout to be true." In a world full of noise and shallow praise, they found a kind of love that whispered, that waited, that watched. And one of them was watching more than the other ever knew. Not to judge, but to decide. Because Jay wasn't here to be saved. He was here to choose. And every day, Liana made that decision easier. At Building 18, gossip wasn't just a pastime, it was a sport. And Liana had always been their favorite target. For months, they whispered about her clothes, her quietness, her refusal to join their nightly card games or rooftop drinking circles. But ever since Jay moved into the room next door, and even more since the day she started leaving food by his door, the tone had changed. What began as passive murmurs curdled into full-on cruelty. "She's fishing for a husband," Carla, the loudest of the neighbors, declared one evening as she smoked at the entrance, legs crossed like a queen on her plastic throne. "You think she gives him food out of kindness? Please, it's bait." Another woman, Marissa, chimed in with a smirk. "She's smart. Picked the one man no one else wanted. Probably figured she wouldn't have competition for once." And then, as if on cue, the compound echoed with cheap laughter. Liana, walking home with a sack of rice balanced on one hip and a bag of bruised vegetables on the other, heard it all. She always did, but she didn't flinch. She didn't slow her steps. Instead, she nodded politely to the security guard, climbed the steps to her room, and quietly locked the door behind her. Jay, who had just returned from an errand, saw her disappear into her room without a word. Something in her posture was different, not broken, but tighter, like a thread pulled taut, one tug away from snapping. That night, she didn't knock. She didn't leave soup at his door. She didn't even light the usual candle in her window that let Jay know she was home safe. He sat in his dark room, staring at the paper crane she'd given him days ago. It had a quote written in her looping script. "You can choose to be kind, even when no one else is watching, especially then." He pressed it between his palms, guilt gnawing at him. He had come here to find a woman whose heart wasn't shaped by greed. He hadn't expected to care so much, not this fast, not this deep. The next morning, Liana walked out early. No makeup, no earrings, her hair tied into a hurried knot. The neighbors watched her as if waiting for her to cry, to collapse, to beg. She didn't. But that didn't stop the whispers. "She must be embarrassed," Carla muttered. "Can't even show her face properly." Jay stepped out just in time to hear it. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, facing them all. "Maybe she's just tired of fake smiles," he said. His voice was low but clear. Carla blinked. "Excuse me?" "She's been nothing but kind to everyone here," he continued. "Even when you all gave her nothing but judgment." Marissa scoffed. "What, now you're her bodyguard?" Jay didn't reply. He looked up toward Liana, who was watching from the second-floor railing, eyes wide. He said nothing more, but the silence that followed him inside the building spoke louder than any defense. That afternoon, Carla struck back. When Liana returned home from work, she found red paint splattered across her front door. Not much, just 3 dripping letters, SLU. The last one trailed off, unfinished, but the message was clear. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she entered her room, grabbed a bucket, filled it with water from the hallway spigot, and scrubbed the door in silence. Jay watched from behind the half-open crack in his door. His chest burned. That night, he knocked. Liana opened the door. Her eyes were tired, rimmed red, but dry. "I'm okay," she said before he could ask. "No, you're not." She looked at him, then stepped aside. He walked in. They sat on the floor. For a while, they didn't speak. Then Liana said softly, "Do you know what it's like to be mocked just for existing?" Jay's jaw tightened. "I'm starting to." She gave a soft, bitter smile. "They think I'm trying to trap you, like you're some ticket out of here." "You're not," he said instantly. "I know," she whispered, "but it hurts. Even when you expect it, it still hurts." Jay reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, and placed it in her hand. A single wrapped chocolate, nothing fancy, but thoughtful. Liana looked at it, then at him, and for the first time in days, she smiled, really smiled. The following evening, she found her room window repaired, no more rainwater dripping through the frame. Her curtain was re-stitched, and someone had left a small bouquet of wildflowers on her windowsill. No note, but she knew who it was. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. The next morning, Jay opened his door to find a box of warm fried bread with a note on top. "Eat before work. People who fix windows deserve breakfast." His heart swelled. It was the first time in years he felt seen. Not as a title, not as a target, but as a person. But Building 18 wasn't done yet. A week later, Liana returned from work to find Carla waiting. I hope you're proud of yourself, she sneered. Liana stopped. What now? I've lived here 10 years and not one man fixed my window. Liana gave her a long look. Maybe if you spent less time judging people and more time being kind, someone might. Carla's jaw dropped. It was the first time Liana had spoken back, and it shut the entire courtyard up. She walked past Carla without another word. That night, Jay stood on the rooftop, staring at the city lights. He'd received a call that afternoon. His father's attorney wanted an update. How's the search? Jay smiled into the wind. I think I've found her. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It started with a knock, but not the soft kind Liana was used to, like Jay's gentle tap or the old man from the third floor asking for help fixing his radio. No, this one was sharp, brutal, the kind that made your spine straighten and your heart race before you even reached the door. She opened it to find the landlord, Mr. Harold, standing with crossed arms and a face that had forgotten how to smile. Behind him stood Carla, arms folded, smirking. You're 3 days late on rent, Harold barked. Liana blinked. I paid last week. I gave the cash to your wife. She didn't tell me anything, he snapped. No receipt, no proof, and I've had complaints. Liana looked at Carla, whose grin only widened. I'm not running a shelter for freeloaders and drama queens, he continued. Pack your things. You have until tonight. But it's raining, Liana said quietly, and it's almost 9 p.m. Not my problem, he said, already walking away. Carla leaned in close and whispered, maybe Jay will take you in. He seems to like picking up strays. Then she turned and strutted down the hallway. Liana closed the door slowly. For a few minutes, she didn't move. Then she did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She sat on the floor and cried. Jay heard everything, from the moment the landlord raised his voice to the moment Carla's heels clicked away in triumph. He didn't come out right away, not because he didn't want to, but because he knew, somehow, Liana needed a moment to break privately. But when he heard the sound of drawers opening and plastic bags rustling, he stood up and went to her door. Liana, he said. No answer. He knocked once. It's me. After a pause, the door creaked open. She stood in the middle of the room, bags half packed, her eyes swollen but dry now. Calm. Too calm. I'm being evicted, she said simply. I know. Apparently my payment didn't count. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. You don't have to go. She looked up. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. She shook her head. Where would I go, Jay? I have no family in the city. I've used up every favor I've ever had. He swallowed hard. Then come with me. She froze. I mean it, he said. You can stay in my room. It's not big, but it's dry and safe. Her eyes widened. Jay, people will talk. Let them, he replied. They already think. I don't care what they think, he interrupted. I care what you feel. And you don't deserve to sleep in the street because some bitter woman has too much time and too little soul. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. An hour later, under a cold drizzle and to the sounds of muffled laughter from upstairs, Jay helped Liana move her bags into his room. There wasn't much. A few clothes, her books, that little tin box she never opened in front of anyone. He gave her the mattress. He took the floor. No arguments, he said when she protested. You've earned that bed 100 times over. She looked at him. Why are you doing this? He met her gaze. You already know why. And in that moment, she did. The days that followed were strange, but peaceful. Living in the same room brought them closer in ways neither of them had expected. They cooked simple meals together, shared quiet conversations about dreams they were afraid to say out loud. They laughed, softly, cautiously, like laughter was something too precious to waste. At night, Liana would lie awake, listening to Jay's breathing from the floor. Steady, comforting, and she wondered how someone who owned so little could make her feel safer than she ever had. She didn't know the irony, that the man sleeping on a mat beside her was one of the wealthiest men in the state, and that every day he spent beside her made it harder to keep pretending. One evening, she came back from work early and found him sketching something in a small notebook. What's that? She asked, drying her hair with a towel. Jay hesitated, then turned it around. It was a drawing of a house, small, simple, with a little garden and a curved stone path. I've always wanted to build this, he said. Not for show, just for peace. She smiled. It's beautiful. He watched her for a second, then closed the notebook slowly. I want you to have peace too, Liana. She looked up. With you? His heart stopped. Then, just as he opened his mouth to answer, a knock. But this time, it was soft, uncertain. Liana opened the door. It was Marissa. The woman looked down, then up again, clearly uncomfortable. I heard what happened with the landlord, she said awkwardly. I'm sorry. Liana blinked. You were one of the people who... I know, Marissa cut in quickly. I was wrong. We were all wrong. Carla, she's been saying things that aren't true. About you, about Jay. And I just wanted you to know, not everyone believes her anymore. Liana nodded, unsure how to respond. Jay stepped beside her. Thanks for telling her, he said quietly. Marissa nodded and turned away, clearly relieved. When the door closed, Liana leaned her back against it and exhaled. You see, Jay said, people are watching, even when you think they're not. Watching me suffer, she murmured. No, he said, watching you rise. But just as things began to settle, fate had one more test. The landlord came back, and this time he brought a lawyer. We're clearing out this wing of the building, he said coldly. New developers are buying the land. You have 3 days. Liana stared at him. This is our home, she said. Not anymore. Jay's eyes darkened. He made a decision. No more waiting. No more pretending. Because it was time for the girl who had nothing to realize she meant everything. To him. And to a legacy she hadn't even seen coming. The news hit like a slow-moving storm. Quiet at first, then thunderous. The building was going to be demolished. Not next year, not next month, next week. The tenants panicked, of course. People packed, protested, and pleaded. But the landlord merely waved a document stamped with official red ink and shrugged. It's done. Liana said nothing. She stood beside Jay, her arms crossed over her chest, eyes empty. She had only just found her footing again, and now the ground was vanishing beneath her. But Jay was done waiting, done hiding. That night, when Liana was asleep, he stepped outside and made a call. Tell them I'm coming back, he said to his assistant. Tell the board I've made my choice. And the girl? The voice asked. He closed his eyes. She's the one. The next morning, Jay left early, said he needed to sort something out. Liana didn't ask. She was too tired to ask anything anymore. But hours passed. The evening, then night, no call, no message, and just when anxiety began curling its fingers around her spine, she stepped out to buy some instant noodles. And froze. There he was, in a sleek black car, wearing a suit that looked hand-stitched, stepping out of the back seat like he'd done it 1,000 times. He spoke to the driver, nodded politely to a man who clearly wasn't his equal, and turned toward the street. That's when he saw her, Liana, standing still. Her grocery bag was hanging from her fingertips like it weighed 100 pounds. Jay's expression shifted, from calm to unsure. He walked toward her. Liana? Who are you? She asked, voice barely a whisper. The question hurt more than it should have. I wanted to tell you, he said. I was waiting for the right moment. She blinked hard, as if trying to make him blur back into the man she knew, the man with holes in his sneakers and scratches on his hands. You lied. No, he said quickly. I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. You let me sleep on the floor. You let me think we were struggling. You saw people insult me, pity me. I didn't let them, he interrupted. I watched because I needed to know who you were, when there was nothing to gain from being kind. Silence. People walked by, but neither of them noticed. Liana, he continued, voice softer now, I'm J. Marcellus Ford. My family owns the development firm buying this building. I came here to get away from everything, from the fake smiles, the gold diggers, the women who loved my name more than my soul. He stepped closer. And then I met you. Her eyes glistened, but her jaw stayed tight. You should have trusted me enough to tell me. I wanted to, but then I realized I needed you to know me like this, poor, tired, invisible, so that if you ever looked at me the way you did last night, it would be real. She closed her eyes. I don't know what's real anymore. His shoulders sank. I get it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a key. This is to my apartment. You can stay there. I'll move out. I'll give you space. But please, don't go back to the streets. She took the key, but not his hand. For 2 days, she didn't speak to him. She moved into the apartment. It was stunning, like something from a movie. Marble counters, a view of the skyline, sheets so soft they made her cry when she touched them, but it didn't feel like hers. It felt borrowed. And her heart was still stuck in that tiny room with cracked walls and half-eaten bowls of soup on the windowsill. On the third day, she returned to Building 18. Not to stay, just to say goodbye. She stood in the middle of the courtyard and looked around at the place that had given her pain, routine, and, somehow, Jay. She saw Carla walk past. For the first time, Carla didn't say anything. She just looked away. Respect? Fear? Maybe both. Liana turned to leave, and that's when she saw him. Jay, standing by the old mango tree near the fence, his hands in his pockets, eyes tired. "You came back," he said quietly. "I had to," she replied. "I left a part of myself here." He didn't move. "Why didn't you tell me the day we met?" she asked. He paused. "Because I was afraid if you knew who I was, you wouldn't let yourself love me." "And now?" "Now I'm afraid I was right." A long breath passed between them. Then she said, "I hated you for 2 days." He nodded. "You made me feel like a fool, like I was part of some test." He opened his mouth, but she stopped him. "But then I realized that I was part of a test. But so were you." He looked up. "You needed to know if I was real," she said. "But I needed to know if you were strong enough to choose someone like me, with no name, no titles, just stubborn hope." He stepped closer. "Liana," he whispered, "if you'll have me, no more games," she said. "Never again. No more pretending to be poor." He laughed, just once, sad and sweet. "Not unless we do it together." She took a step forward, and this time, when his hand reached out, she didn't pull away. That night, he cooked dinner. She brought the rice. They ate like they always did, on the floor. But this time, in a penthouse, with candles flickering not because of a blackout, but because she liked the glow. And in the silence between bites, Liana finally said the words he had prayed for since the first time he saw her smile. "You, just you, was all I ever needed." The invitation arrived on gold-embossed cardstock. Formal dinner, Ford Group executive circle, attendance mandatory. Liana turned the heavy paper over in her hand, feeling every raised letter like it was a warning. She had grown up eating dinner cross-legged on the floor, out of chipped bowls and plastic containers. Now she was being asked to sit beside board members and billionaires, under chandeliers that probably cost more than her entire childhood. When she looked up at Jay, her expression was unreadable. "I can't do this." He stepped closer, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Yes, you can. You've faced worse than a room full of egos in suits. But they'll look at me and think, why her?" "Then let them wonder," Jay said firmly, "because when they do, I'll be looking at you and thinking, thank God. Her." The night of the dinner, the penthouse felt like a different world. Liana wore a deep navy dress, not glittering, not loud, just timeless and graceful. Her hair was swept up in a way that let her neckline breathe, and her earrings were small pearls Jay had given her quietly that morning. No note, no words, just a ribbon and a kiss on her forehead. As they stepped out of the black car and into the marble foyer of the Ford estate, every eye turned. People knew Jay. People did not know her, but they would. The ballroom glimmered with gold and crystal. Live jazz filled the air. Waiters in tuxedos drifted between conversations that cost millions. Jay held her hand tighter. "Stay close," he said. "I won't run," she replied. The first blow came from a woman in red, tall, elegant, and clearly bred for this world. She approached with a predatory smile. "Jay," she said sweetly, air kissing his cheek. "And this must be your guest." Jay's jaw tightened. "Liana, this is Clarice." "An old associate?" Clarice's smile widened. "Of course. Lovely to meet you, Liana. What do you do?" Liana smiled politely. "I used to clean houses, then I worked in a diner." A pause. Then Clarice let out a small laugh. "How quaint." Before Jay could speak, Liana added, still smiling, "And now I read board reports in my boyfriend's office while he thinks I'm napping." Jay nearly choked on his wine. Clarice's smile faltered. "I believe in knowing both sides of a balance sheet," Liana continued, "the numbers and the people behind them." "Well," Clarice said, tone tightening, "you're full of surprises." "You'd be amazed what a bar girl can learn while listening," Liana replied, "especially about men who think they're untouchable." Jay's eyes gleamed with pride. Clarice retreated. Score, Liana, 1, High Society, 0. But it wasn't just Clarice. As the dinner progressed, more tests came. A board member questioned her background. A family friend asked if she was just passing through. One executive whispered to another, "A phase. He'll marry a Kensington girl next year." Liana heard it all, but she never flinched, never looked away. When dessert was served and a toast was called, all eyes turned to Jay. He stood, raised his glass, and then did something no one expected. He turned to Liana. "This is the woman who reminded me who I am," he said clearly. "Not a title, not a legacy, but a man. A man who wanted truth more than comfort, loyalty more than status. And I found all of that in her. Silence, then murmurs, then applause, polite, restrained, but real." Liana lowered her gaze, cheeks warm. When they sat back down, Jay whispered, "Still think you don't belong here?" She looked at him, her voice soft but sure. "I don't think I need to belong here. I think this room needs to learn from me." But one heart hadn't softened. Across the table sat Philip Ford, Jay's uncle and a major shareholder. Old money, old ego, old bitterness. After the dinner, he pulled Jay aside. "This girl is a liability," he hissed. "She doesn't have the pedigree or the polish." Jay stared at him. "She has more grace than anyone in that room." "Grace doesn't run corporations. Connections do." Jay straightened his back. "Then maybe it's time we change what runs corporations." Philip narrowed his eyes. "You're making a mistake." Jay smiled coldly. "No, uncle. I'm making a legacy." Back in the car, Liana sat quietly. Jay reached for her hand. "I know it was hard," she nodded. "But you were brilliant." "I didn't try to be," she whispered. "I just told the truth." He kissed her hand. "Exactly." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't care about pearls," she said, "or parties, or opinions." He rested his head atop hers. "What do you care about?" She looked out the window at the stars. "Peace, purpose, and being enough for someone, even when the world says I'm not." Jay's voice was firm. "You are." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since stepping into that glittering battlefield, she believed it. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the penthouse, painting the hardwood floors in soft gold. Liana stood barefoot, holding a mug of tea, staring out at the skyline that stretched endlessly beyond the glass. It had been 6 months since that dinner. 6 months since the world discovered who she was. Not in name, not in bloodline, but in strength. And somehow, the world adjusted. At first it was slow. Journalists hunted her past. Gossip pages called her the diner Cinderella. She ignored them all, because she wasn't trying to be anyone's headline. She was trying to be herself. In Jay's world, there were boardrooms and private jets and power plays wrapped in silk. But Liana never changed her pace. She walked through corridors like she still heard the dripping faucet from Building 18. She ate in marble kitchens like she still had 3-day-old rice wrapped in foil in her bag. Jay never asked her to change. He only asked her to stand beside him. And she did, but never behind. That spring, Jay hosted the company's annual gala, a grand affair with politicians, actors, and investors from 5 countries. Liana didn't want to go. She was tired of proving herself. But Jay said only one thing. "You don't go to prove, you go to remind." She wore a dress the color of dusk. No diamonds, no train, just elegance and quiet confidence. When she entered the ballroom, a hush fell. Not because she looked like royalty, but because somehow she made royalty look human. That night, Jay announced a new initiative. A scholarship fund named after Liana's mother, granting full education and housing to underprivileged girls across the state. The room applauded, but Liana, she cried, softly, silently, because the world had finally turned in the direction of someone like her, and this time, she had helped it turn. The weeks passed. Jay proposed, not in a castle, not at a gala, but on the rooftop of their building. Yes, that building, the one that was supposed to be torn down. He had it bought, preserved, turned into affordable housing. And on the very rooftop where they once watched stars through rusted railings, he knelt on one knee and said, "I don't want to save you, Liana. I want to build with you. Will you be the queen of everything we create?" She laughed through tears and whispered, "Only if I still get to make rice and eggs some nights." He said yes before she did. On the day of their wedding, the sky threatened rain, but it didn't fall. because even the clouds wanted to see what a miracle looked like. Liana walked down the aisle not with a father on her arm. He was gone long ago, but with her past behind her and her future in front of her. People gasped, not at the gown, not at the venue, but at the stillness in her eyes, the kind that didn't need validation, the kind only found in someone who had walked through fire and emerged not burnt, but refined. After the ceremony, Carla stood awkwardly near the buffet table. She hadn't expected an invitation. But Jay sent one anyway. Liana approached her quietly. Carla lowered her gaze. "I don't deserve to be here." Liana paused. "No one deserves grace. That's why it's called grace." Then she handed Carla a small envelope. Inside was a job offer from the community center Liana had helped fund. Carla looked up, eyes shining. "Why would you help me?" Liana smiled. "Because I remember how it felt to be hated for no reason." And then she walked away, crowned, but barefoot on the inside. Later that night, as the crowd faded and the lights dimmed, Jay and Liana sat on the floor of their suite, still in wedding clothes, eating leftover cake with their fingers. "Do you ever think about the old building?" she asked. "All the time?" She looked at him. "I miss the quiet." He leaned back. "Let's buy a cottage. No staff? Just us. No press? Just trees." She laughed. "Sounds perfect." He kissed her cheek. "Everything with you is." She grew serious. "You know, I never wanted this crown." "I know," he said, "but it fits." He nodded. "Because it was made for someone who didn't want it." Outside, the stars blinked softly, as if whispering their approval. And somewhere far away in a place still lit by a single candle, and echoing with old gossip, a little girl held a newspaper photo of Liana and whispered, "Maybe I can be something too." Because sometimes the greatest royalty is born not from thrones, but from thorns. And the strongest queens are the ones who never ask to wear the crown, but carry it anyway. They called her foolish, dirty, ambitious without reason. But when truth stepped forward, it didn't come in gold. It came in character, in quiet loyalty, and choices made when no one was watching. And now, the girl they said would never be enough is the one everyone wants to be. So, next time you're tempted to look down on someone, remember Liana, because the ones the world throws away, they are often the ones born to lead it.